Are you all caught up on podcasts? Are you tired of listening to the same music over and over and need some fresh new tracks? Well, look no further. Gnome here, and I'm teaming up with the Hater, the Tailgater, the Tyrader, and Zuck's favorite prisoner. That's right, Jake from the Bleach Bros podcast. We are bringing you the Hateful Gnomes Music Hut, a bi-weekly mini podcast all about music. We are covering music recommendations, bands, personal stories, concerts, even why Jake listens to the Beebs. Make sure you are following both the Bleach Bros and the Dads on Daypool for updates. Episodes are alternating on both feeds. Raise the curtain, hit the lights, turn the dials to 11, horns up. We are live, baby.
You're listening to the Bleach Brothers podcast, hosted by B-Word and Jake.
Welcome into the Bleach Brothers podcast for episode 52, our 1-year anniversary. Welcome in, Jake. How are you, bro?
Oh, I'm great, man. There's 3 anniversaries that are important in my life now. My wife, this podcast, and the day I'm going to die.
You celebrate the day you're going to die
I'm
in
going
anniversary
to.
form?
Dude, I am going to have a party on Earth. I asked my wife, I've asked for 3 things, and all of them she says absolutely not, so it's up to my kiddos to do this. I want to be half cremated. I want my legs, but I want my dick still there. I want the legs cremated. I want to be holding my own ashes up in the casket, pointing at the crowd, like with sunglasses on, like I look fucking cool.
I think we're just going to start this episode over again because this is fucked.
Or I'm going to be a marionette in the crowd. And I'll be sitting there. Nobody will know. And then I'm going to have They Ain't Got No Strings on Me playing, and I'm going to dance into the casket and close it.
I would much rather see you as a Muppet. So that way somebody can actually have, like, they can lose their watch in your butthole. I'm all about that. A marionette's just kind of weird, dude, because you're a tall human.
Right.
So you have to find somebody else who's a tall human in order to, like, actually, like,
no, I'll have him in the
walk
ceiling.
around.
I'll have him in the ceiling. Like, Team America World Police, some guy just hanging up in the rafters.
Wow. All right. That went off a cliff really quick.
I want that, B-word. Why not? Okay, let me ask you this. When you die, what do you want to happen, B-word?
Cremate me, spread me around.
Where? Where do you want to be spread? On somebody's bagel?
So, I mean, depending on who, I mean, that might be interesting. My grandpa, when he died, my mom's dad, he was cremated, and all of his remains went to the 4 kids. So there's my mom, I have 2 aunts, and I have an uncle, and they were all over the United States. So he was spread out all over the United States. But part of what he wanted to do is he wanted to be put under a willow tree where a dog would be able to pee on him. So I know that there was a little bit of ashes that were there. And then he also wanted a part of his remains to be flushed down the toilet. So my aunt took care of that too. It's an interesting concept. I mean, I guess once you're dead, you have literally no use for your body. So I don't know that I really care what happens to my body afterward, because at that point, it's not my body, my choice, I suppose. But that's just where it's at, man.
Do me a favor. Put me on the list of people that get some of your ashes. I have an idea for you, B-word. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a little salt shaker for the Salty Hippo Nation, right? I'm going to put your ashes in it mixed with glitter. And I'm going to go to strip clubs.
Oh, fuck.
And I'm going to sprinkle you on little slut dust B-words on them in the back whenever they give me a lap dance, just so you can join me.
I'm fine with that, but save a little bit for me so that way you can go to a Vegas Golden Knights versus a Chicago Blackhawks, and you can just throw me in their bench.
Oh, my God. Dude.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
That is too. FTGK all day, bro. Forever.
Right.
Dude, could you imagine if I was a marionette in the middle of their stadium? Just lower me down. Like all right, I'm rich enough from the podcast where I pay for this and the whole Golden Knights, and it's just me fighting the night as a marionette.
It's almost like a weird version of like table hockey or the foosball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, air hockey.
Somebody's like a marionette, but they've got like a stick in your ass, and every time like they move it a certain way, like you stop the puck. It's pretty amazing. I get it.
I wish they could make it so your body lasted longer, because I would just ask you to weekends at Burning Me everywhere with you.
Oh yeah.
Just for
I
like,
think that's called the Biden now, but I'm not all too sure. I mean, Weekend at Bernie's is so Gen X, and we're now Zennial right now. So, like, I'm literally thinking like that's the or they might call, I don't know. I'm getting political here, and this is not political in nature. But if you can't recognize that the dude is just put out there and made a fool out of himself, like, whatever, just believe it.
yeah,
It's fine.
sprinkle him in a salty hippo
Yeah,
shaker.
yeah.
You know what's great about this?
Sprinkles are for winners.
This is the amalgamation. How's that word say? Amalgamation.
Amalgamation.
Oh, I said it right.
You were close.
Amalgamation.
Amation, like
Amation.
animation.
Okay. Anyways, Slante. This is the amalgamation of our show in a whole. It's been a year, and I mean, this is essentially what we do. This is
Solante. That's an old one. I think that's called So our listener Barb, she called it like Concha, or I don't know. It's not the same god as Moon Knight, but
Conchu?
it's like, yeah, but it's close. But so okay, the elephant in the room here. After we get done talking about our nonsense, we've been podcasting now actually for a little bit over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, we've recorded 55 episodes, but there's 3 episodes that either weren't released or were taken back due to just different reasons. So this technically, if everything would have stayed, would have been our 55 episode. But because we now have 52 episodes in the mix, we're going to celebrate our 1 year in podcasting. And so, Jake, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In this year-long journey that we've been on, what do you like the most about podcasting? And not related to our chemistry, not related to our show. What's your biggest takeaway?
Well, I'm vain, so if I don't have it. No. My favorite thing of podcasting for me personally is just the relief of letting it out sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like sort of like a good friend of ours, Aaron from I Had to Say It, who has been a guest. Thank you. How he did it as a cathartic therapeutic session, right? Just to let it out. So personally, that's what it is. Like, I enjoy talking to my best friend, but there's just things sometimes I want to let out, or just like, something I want to talk about and have people listen. But the main one is the fans, like interaction.
Yeah.
And whether it's other podcasters that are fans, because we've met a great group of people.
Yeah.
We have became in a small circle. I'll say a small circle that we really enjoy, that we work well with. We talk about, we go through all the details of shows, how we can be better and stuff. But the fan interaction, especially because it's been growing, which is nice to see. I mean, because we joke, and mind you, we're not those people that, as long as we're having fun, we don't need to make money. That is true. I mean, if it's not fun, we're not going to do it. If it's a job,
Right.
If it turns into a job where we hate each other, we're not going to do it. However, we did say in the beginning, we were going to have these phone conversations on the phone anyways. This is the type of conversations we have. Now, are we putting out an entertaining product? Yes. Is there a little bit more nuance to it instead of just a phone call? Yes. But whether we had 25 listeners or thousands a month like we are getting now, I like the change, but I mean, still in my mind, our conversation hasn't changed, if that makes sense. And I enjoy that.
I would agree with you. I think, again, back to not related to our show. So I think for both of us, just to kind of go backward before I go forward again, for both of us, we've been huge fans of podcasts for several years. It was never really a direction I think either one of us wanted to take per se. Like, we just didn't wake up one day and say, hey, we want to become a podcast. Like, you had other aspirations. You were working on TV. You were working on local channels. You had interviewed for national network stuff. You'd been on sports radio. This was never really something that I had ventured into. I was always more or less like a support staff, if you will, for what you were doing, because, you're my best friend. And so I wanted to make sure that as your friend, I was being a cheerleader for you. And there was some different Twitter things and social media things and YouTube things to vote on, or to like, or to rate, or to do whatever, that I would always take part in, which is interesting now, because we find that our fans are doing the exact same thing for us. Like, they're voting in that damn podcast Twitter challenge for us. They're also being interactive in our social media. It's more than just like liking our post. They're actually commenting or sharing or introducing other people to our posts too, which is really nice. But I think the biggest thing that I love about podcasting, like you were saying, I love the circle we've built of indie podcasters.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we were late to the party in a certain sense. Like some of these podcasters have been around a lot longer than us, but in all reality, it's not been that much longer than us. But I feel like they're like the measuring stick, if you will, for our podcast, because we wanted to be them. And now that we're actually collaborating with some of them and, we're interacting with them frequently, we've got message groups on all these different platforms. We've got text message threads, phone calls, all this sort of stuff. I find that I appreciate it a lot more. And I'm even that much more excited for their content to come out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Cause speaking of content, you didn't put this in the rundown, but I'm going to pull a Jake here like normal. What are some of the shows that you're really into yourself right now over the last year? Because I think that's changed since we got into it, because not only are we listening just to listen, we're listening to friends and stuff. We're also listening for what else is out there and stuff. But like, what are probably in your top rotation right now?
So I think my staples would be Dad's on Dayquil. Is right in there. To be honest with you, we started out with Joe Rogan, I want to say, and some of those national ones. I don't listen to those as often as I used to. Not because I don't find them entertaining, just because I want to support the Indie Podcast Network. But Dad's on Dayquil is a good one. I've actually, so I follow Dallas area sports talk, and so there was a radio host there who started his own YouTube channel. It's the Jeff Kavanaugh Show. Is another one that's been on play right now. Inner Idiot has been a fun one to listen to. As soon as we got approached by Happy Hour Podcast, like to be quite candid and not to knock anybody, they kind of came on as like fanboys, if you will, for our podcast, and it shocked me because I felt like we weren't at a level to have fans. Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
But they're putting out a good product. Jake and the Dingus is good. We've got Aaron at I Had to Say It is always in my rotation. For a minute there, it was bottom of the lineup before they decided to do some changes. I think that there's just a whole bunch of things. Mom Swipes Left. I started listening to Doom Generation recently. I love the gals over there. Buzz in the Tower. Pop Culture Pastor, Derek Duvall Show, Gag on This. I can go on. Assville. There's a whole ton of podcasts that I have on rotation that I really enjoy. Our Cynic Culture, I love that one. Mad About Movies is another good one. And I really enjoy the smaller podcast format because I feel like conversations can be more intimate while also taking care of national topics and or just entertaining topics in general. So what are you streaming right now?
See, I'll agree with you on that. I get into something, and it's like I notice I'm like all about like, and you could probably say acknowledge what I'm going to say about myself in the sense if I get into one, it's like I'll be like into Buzz in the Tower, right? Because they're an '80s one, and that's the '80s show for me. I don't need to go really venture and listen to a bunch more '80s shows. But I'll have to say this: Who Would Win is a really good one right now, where they take like, I think one of them I listened to was Pac-Man versus the Riddler, and they have guests come on and they sort of explain, and it's not just like, it's not just nerd boys like just arguing it out. They are, but there's actuality like behind the answers. Like, he does this or this comic book or whatever. Inner Idiot, the whole circle you said of ours, Inner Idiot, Dad's on Dayquil, I Had to Say It, Happy Hour. Though I can list all those. We know that. Another one that I fell in love with over the last year, and I introduced you and everybody, this is probably one of my favorite ones, is Everything is Alive.
Yes.
And I actually found this when we did the Radiotopia contest, where I was like, okay, what type of shows are on this contest we're in? Because for fans that don't know, if you go into the back catalog a bit over the year, we did a little like, would you be my neighbor, like contest for this Radiotopia thing out of California. Entered, had a fun time. It was actually learning for us because we were learning how to, you were editing still. We were trying to figure out how to write up some stuff because, we've never ran out of things to talk about. We're entertaining B-word, but we never also just been like, we can turn on the mic and just be entertaining. Like, so we do plan this out. We do write things out. And that one was actually all scripted. Like we had to write something out to do. And Everything is Alive is a show where I honestly clicked it because of the photo of the show, like, you know, the like our logo. It's a wine glass with crackers and cheese. So I was thinking, okay, this is going to be about like fermented beverages and you know, cheese and food and stuff because I'm a foodie. And then I see the first episode is called like Sam the Coke. And I'm like, what? And it's about a can of Coke and he talks to inanimate objects. And if you think that sounds weird, give it a listen. It's crazy good though.
Yeah,
Quality's great. It's a new idea.
yeah.
It's awesome. Jack Ramsey's. I'm a big Portland fan. I'm also a fan of Brendan Sprague, who's been on the show, and Danny Meringue. They host that. Great rundown. Another one, the Meat Block, which is a butcher podcast, which I'm in the meat field, but also I just like to learn. And so I can listen to those sometimes, those 2-hour ones of just guys talking about something and just throw it on in my office. How You Live in Jay Piven. I loved Ari
Jeremy
Gold.
Piven, yeah.
I love Jeremy Piven. Listening to some of his stories about how, you know, he would be yelling at his mom like when he was trying out for or on Entourage and calling her a cunt and stuff, and it just is fucking hilarious to me. Assville, as you mentioned, Shane Brendan's actually a buddy of mine up here. 2 comedians. They do a killer job. Great show up in Portland. They are touring all the time too. So him and Seth Allen, if you ever get a chance to. And then, you know, the big ones like the Joe Rogan Experience, Your Mom's House, 2 Bears, 1 Cave. But another big one that a lot of people might not hear of is Come Town by Nick Mullen. And I introduced you to this one, B Word, because I got introduced to it on YouTube when they were making fun of Steven Seagal films.
Yeah.
And ever since, I've just fell in love with this show and I listened to it. It's 3 stand-up comedians and it's just hilarious just listening to them, almost like that Mystery Science Theater thing where they're just ripping on shitty movies. So that'd be in my rotation. But the nice thing is too, there's a variety there, but it's also, you learn things, right? You also find like friendships or what you can do. And not that you're stealing ideas, but you know, there's a lot that comes out of listening to other podcasts. Like musicians listen to other musicians for a reason.
I would agree with you. I think that my podcast taste, if you will, has completely changed. But also just because we write and produce, like our stuff isn't scripted. So I can't say that our stuff is scripted, but we do have a rundown that we at least try to be somewhat respectful to as we go down the line here. But one of the things that I think at becoming a podcaster that I've focused on is podcasts just having to have impeccable sound quality. Like you and I decided when we wanted to do a podcast, we didn't want to go in and make a fool out of ourselves. So we ended up recording. Well, we didn't record, but we practiced several times before we actually put out our very first episode. We invested into microphones. We invested into some of the technology. We invested in a logo. We wanted to make sure that what we were doing was right because that was going to be our brand moving forward. We put a lot of thought into our name. And obviously, if you're listening to this and still listening to our anniversary episode, you've been listening at least for a little while. You probably know where the origin of our name is and why it means something to us. I think learning more about the podcast network and the podcast, what goes into it, I respect podcasts that have really good sound quality and just really good quality as far as like either keeping to a rundown or you can tell like they've talked about it before. They're just not hitting play and recording. And then whatever is like, that kind of drives me nuts knowing what we've done and what and not to say it's easy, but it's not difficult. Just to be able to sit down and do that. So that's probably a good learning lesson for me too.
Well, the whole point of podcasting is to have a conversation, right? Whether it's scripted or not. And it's not that there aren't people out there that can click on the mic and be a fucking entertainment. Like that's right. There are. And we are to a point, but we also know to a fault, like we can't just every night show up here because we record Wednesdays, everything releases on Sundays to unveil the curtain. But we can't just say, hey, yeah, we don't have no idea what we're talking about. We're just going to talk. That's never happened. We would have those phone calls, but I mean, it also makes it nice because when we've had guests on, I feel like, and you've said it before, that we do a very good job hosting, not to toot our own horn in the sense of we try really hard to make sure everything's in line to put out a good product for our fans.
Yeah.
In the sense of, here's what we're going to do. Here's where you need to come. We can be flexible with time because I mean, we still have jobs. This is not our full-time thing. This is a hobby. If it ever turned into something, that'd be fucking awesome. If it doesn't, we're still having fun, and we're doing it with people. And if we ever get burnt out, we'll just admit it. But we try our damnedest to not only help each other and appease each other, because I will commend you over the year, all the stuff you've learned and done for this show. And I think we do a very good balancing act of carrying that weight.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
Yeah. And our show, I don't want to say is unique because there's a lot of shows that are out there that do this, but this would not be Bleach Bros if it wasn't for B Word and Jake. Like there's no way that we could replicate this, I want to say, on our own. Because your personality is so much different from mine in a lot of aspects, and mine's so much different than yours. That's why we had, B Words of Wisdom and Jake's Take, and some different things that we've done that we'll get back into in the near term. But we have a lot of similar interests. We have a lot of similar passions, but our personalities are two different and almost entirely different. Where we balance each other out in the show, and we do a good job, I want to say, of trying to put out good products. I mean, a lot of the ideas for the rundown is a collaboratory effort between the both of us. It's not just me saying, hey, we're going to have this guest on and here's the rundown, or hey, here's what the name of the show is going to be. A lot of times we agree on that together, and there's been times that we've deviated from that, but we're also at a level where we trust each other enough where neither one of us is going to try to tarnish our brand or our show or what we're trying to create, because at the end of the day, this is a hobby. But if this were to be a permanent thing for us, we want to make sure that we're putting out the quality. We want to respect that, and I appreciate that about you, because we have an opportunity to really work on our craft here, and hopefully it turns into something. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I have a lot of hope that maybe it'll get picked up and or we'll get some good sponsors or something that where it starts paying for itself and it starts working out. But in the meantime, man, I love what we're doing. I mean, we've talked about this outside of the show all the time. If at some point neither one of us love what we're doing anymore, we're done. That's the moment we're done.
Yeah, and speaking of sponsors, use Bleach Bros 5, all lowercase, at Jerky Pro for the best jerky on the planet. So we've talked about what we've done over the year and favorite parts of the show, what shows we're listening to and stuff. But I want to get into, we've had a lot of guests.
We have.
I mean, we don't have a guest every week. We try to the same thing with our show, do a variety.
Yep.
And a lot of them have been friends. I mean, we're calling in favors, but also trying to get people on for certain reasons. Like, I'm going to just say it out front. One of my favorite ones was the Super Bowl, where we called friends all from the sports industry, in the sense of, ESPN, the voice of the Trailblazers, other local shows or other podcasts, and had a variety of guests come on and give a bunch of different topics. And I mean, big thanks to Brennan Sprague, Will Burtz, Tyler Havlin from The Inner Idiot, who came on just, because he was a big Bengals fan, Jordan Robinson, and Tommy Thompson. That was a good variety show. That was probably our longest episode, but I thought it was very well done. And on that note, B-Word, what is probably, and I'm not saying you're going to call other people out, but what are some of your favorite guests that we've had on?
So real quick, I just want to shout out our guests before I get into that. You mentioned some. We've had obviously the dads on Dayquil. We've had the entire crew on individually. We've had Aaron from I Had to Say It. Recently, we had Max Green from Violent New Breed. That was a great episode. We've had Mike from Happy Hour, Big Nick from Gag on This. We've had the OG Bleach Bro Mitch. That was actually a lot of work to get done, but that was such a fun episode.
We had Jay from Porn Stash.
Yeah, we had Jay from Porn Stash. We had Kurt from Half Hour Bros. We had AJ Wyatt from Wyatt and the Ashes. We've had quite a bit of guests on over the last year, and what I'm proud of, before I answer your question, what I'm proud of is that each one of those guests did not have a cookie cutter format. Like, we made an individualized format for whatever they were coming on to talk about. And I don't want to get into what was my favorite guest. I think I'm going to talk about what was my favorite episode with a guest.
That's a better point. You said it better than me.
And I think for me, we wanted to start out as a sports show when we first did this. I mean, we've said this before. If you're a podcast, you start out as true crime, or you start out as a sports podcast, right? That's the vast majority of podcasts that are out there. And we decided not to be one of those. We went into like comedy interviews, just entertainment in general. But I had a vendetta. I think I had to prove something. And we talked about this off air, where for years you'd been on sports radio, and it seemed like nothing was treading water as far as trying to make that a career. And even though you were influential, you were networking with people, it always kind of seemed to me as a spectator that you just weren't host material. And I didn't like that. And so I told you, I said, hey, we need to do a Super Bowl episode, but I need you to trust me. And I'm going to edit the shit out of this episode, and we're going to make a whole Super Bowl thing. And you were absolutely, let's do it. And between guests that we had already had on with Jordan Robinson from the Cover O, we had Travis Demers from the Portland Trailblazers. We had Brandon Sprague from 1080 The Fan and Jack Ramsey's. We had Will Burtz from Bottom of the Lineup. We had Tommy Thompson from Kenny B's Sports Betting here in Reno. And we also had Tyler on to talk about his team. That was probably one of my favorite episodes with guests, just because each guest, like, we didn't have a round table. It wasn't a round table with every guest. Each guest had a segment, and we had talked to them in the beginning, like, what do you want to talk about? But here's where we're going. And I felt like not only did every segment hit on the whole theme of the Super Bowl, I felt like everybody had a fucking blast. And I know that I had a blast. It was a lot of work for that week that we did it.
Yeah, and it was cool when you came to me with that, because at first I was like, "What's the vendetta?" Like, because you actually were like, "I have a vendetta," and I was like, "Oh fuck, what is happening now?" Like, we already hate each other's teams, Cowboys versus whatever. But even though I've drafted a new team, which we can get into another time, but it was a cool moment when you said, "Jake, I want to prove to them that you are host material," because I've admitted I always know I've been a number two. I'm not saying I need to host my own show, but I think I'm entertaining enough to hold my own and be knowledgeable and hold down the mic when I need to. And I think I'm a perfect number two for you. I think, as I've said, you hold down the fort, you introduce us, get us out, but I can bring entertainment with that. But I did enjoy too that you said, I want to edit the shit out of this, so if we ever had a job interview, we could go to them and say, "Here you go. This is something we could do," and it would be fucking proud.
Yeah, I'm super proud of that episode. One of my favorite episodes. I wouldn't necessarily call it my favorite episode. But okay, so same question back to you. As far as an episode with a guest on it, not including the Super Bowl, in case it was the Super Bowl episode, what would you say is your favorite one so far this past year?
I have more segments that I enjoy with guests. I think one of the funnest times I had, just because every time I listen to it, and I don't like to listen to my own voice or myself over and over again. I'm not one of those people in the sense where I can sit and listen to my own show all the time. I listen to it for certain things, like that me and you could talk about next week, but was with Dome when from Dad's on Dayquil when we did the spelling bee. Because I'm a smart person, B-word, and there's the joke, I go off on a tangent, but there are times when I'm either irate, so red hot, or things I'm not good at, like spelling and pronouncing words. Oh my God, dude. That was probably one of the funnest moments we had. Another one was with Max Green. Yeah. And I think it's because on the show, the episode, him and I go back just about as far as me and you go back.
Yeah.
And it was more just catching up. And as we said on the episode, him and I will go like 6 years, and then we find a way back to each other just to talk and have fun and reminisce. And I think that was just a really good time.
That's the same with me with our New Year, New Do episode with Mitch. Because behind the scenes, Mitch and I actually had a falling out. I want to say it was 2012, 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. I don't even remember. And it was really over something pretty petty. And we hadn't talked up until probably a year and a half ago. No, it was about a year ago, actually. I think we talked, and I've been friends with his brother the whole time, but I reached out through his brother Matt, and I said, "Hey, Jake and I are doing this project, and the name is reminiscent of a time that we were, that Mitch was involved in, and we really want to include him in this episode." And there was a fourth Bleach Bro who, not for any other reason, but we've lost contact with him, and I just thought it was special because I thought, number one, we talked really a good conversation about the Spider-Man No Way Home movie, but we also had that reminiscing time, kind of like how you were talking about with Max, where we just enjoyed the shit out of it. I mean, both as we were recording and also after we were recording, and we just really enjoyed it. And, you know, the good thing is that Mitch and I have been in contact pretty frequently. Where he's now in an entirely different state, just kind of like Jake and I. But, you know, it's nice to be able to number one, do the water under the bridge, but number two, just we put out a really good episode, and I thought the conversation was great. I thought it was funny. It was candid. Obviously, it was a little intimate at times, you know, with the bleach, but I thought it was really good, man. So, you know, what else you got on the guest front?
Well, like my whole point, I know we said it in the beginning, but I want to throw out there that every guest has done a great job, and we had a blast with all of them. And there's little things I could say about every single one. Like, I mean, a few other ones was me and AJ, you know, he gave us music for this show, which was awesome. And we're big fans of Wyatt and the Ashes, and him and I were supposed to be in bands together for a while, but Brandon Sprague and Travis Demers are two people I've always sort of looked up to in the sports industry out here. And having them on really felt cool for them to say, yeah, of course we would come on and help you out anytime, Jake. And I think it's also made me realize there's like, just like the little circle we've made in the indie podcast community, there's a lot of people we've reached out to that of course always want to, you know, we're not trying to be those annoying friends or like, I have a podcast, listen, you know, you come on. And because the other thing is we're not just inviting everybody. We're not like, oh yeah, you want to come on and talk about, you know, your bananas you grow in your backyard. That'd be fucking great. Like there's got to be validity and a reason. And also we want them to want to come on, you know, and that's the other thing we've noticed is more people have reached out going, hey, I've been listening. This is awesome. And seeing friends come out of the woodwork from way back in the day that I had no idea, or like our huge Salty Hippo Nation fan doing the overt advertising and seeing stickers pop up all over this country, Hawaii, Oklahoma, New Hampshire, everywhere. They're popping up, and it's awesome to see that.
Well, and you know, speaking of that, I have a girlfriend, a friend that's a girl that I haven't talked with since October 30th of last year, and not for any other reason than she lives in a different area and, you know, whatever. She ended up sending me a message today. I didn't even tell you this. And she goes, I just wanted to let you know that I just started to listen to your podcast. It's rad, and I'm a fan. Now, mind you, we started in April, May of last year. And here it is a year later, and she's just now starting, and she's like, this is a good product. I'm going to listen to this. I just really appreciate the feedback like that, especially from friends and family, where they're like, you know, you guys are entertaining enough, and I just appreciate it. Like, I like to listen to it. And, you know, I like you said, we don't try to force it down anybody's mouth. Like I could care less if somebody listens to the podcast if they really don't want to. If they're interested, and they want to give, you know, positive feedback, I'm all about that life. But, you know, so speaking of guests, we've done some guest spots on some different episodes. I'm just going to go down the list here, and these are in no particular order. We've done Tattoo Squid. We've done Gunner's Legendary Podcast, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, the president of the Salty Hippo Nation,
or
baby.
The Legendary Gunner Podcast, maybe. Jake and the Dingus, I Had to Say It, 8750. Dad's on Dayquil, Happy Hour Podcast, Bottom of the Lineup, Gag on This Podcast, and For Too Many Podcast. I just want to thank all of those guys that reached out to us and allowed us to be on their podcast. We really try not to be those people that reach out to others to be on the podcast because, again, we don't want to be annoying, and sometimes we just think that we're not worthy of it, candidly. So, especially if we're a huge fan of your podcast. So, but you know, recently we did a 2-day tour, two-day tour of 3 podcasts. We did Jake and the Dingus on a Friday night, Tattoo Squid on a Saturday, Gunner on a Saturday night. And we do that sort of thing to really just have, try to get things going and try to get a new network and try to get to know other podcasts. And I'm a fan of that. Like, I like that. And I also like when people invite us on, and especially when we love their product. You know, what was the podcast or podcast or segment or whatever? Oh, I should also add Inner Idiot with their Instagram.
I was going to say their
lives.
lives that we do.
Yeah, we weren't on their lives, or we were on their lives. But which one's the most memorable for you?
I'll be honest, and it's going to sound like I'm a favorite, but Dad's on Dayquil. I think it's because, honestly, we all joked behind the scenes that we wanted to do an episode of all of us together. But the funny thing is they were saying like, oh, how are we going to get all five of us in a room to not overtalk each other? And editing's going to be a fucking nightmare. And it turned out great, especially when we all teamed up against Stoned and his stupid dad feud.
I think it was
And we
Dad
all
Feud or
we were
something,
all agreeing at some point on it. And I think my favorite, like, as just like going on there though, and like just having a blast and seeing the smile on his face was Gunner.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, Gunner is the president of our Salty Hippo Nation, and he's a kid. He's a kid of Tabs and Mike from the Happy Hour podcast, and he is just a huge fan. And it's just one of those things. It's just a connection, and it's awesome to see. And it was just great to talk to him and have him interview us and stuff. They've all been fun for their own right. I mean, Gag on this, I had a blast too, because it was sort of that thing with Dads on Dayquil. I was a little afraid of how are we going to do this? Are we going to talk over each other? And the format they had a rundown, and it was a good time. I'm the type of person though, B-word, and you know this. I'm just going to say it and be crazy. I started doing a lot of the Inner Idiot lives with them, and I turned into a guy that they could hit up if somebody else didn't show up that night. And I'd get on there. I mean, we'd go crazy. And I think one of my favorite nights, and this is why this is memorable, I'm upstairs in my game room, right? Everybody leaves, and Tyler texts me, hey, can you be on? Somebody dropped out. I'm like, no problem. I jump on. My mom and my wife are downstairs with my 13-year-old, and they get a notification Jake Medosic is going live. And so they all log in, and right out of the gate, I'm talking about somebody eating my butthole and calling somebody a cunt. And my mom just gets out, and I get a text, you guys are disgusting. And I just love that moment, because here's the thing, I didn't falter. I don't change. That's just who I am.
Yeah,
what about you?
I love the Inner Idiots lives, because he would have three other people on with him. There would be a rundown or some sort of rankings or something that he would do. It was a good way to actually meet other podcasts. I think that's actually how we got hooked up with Big Nick of Gag on this podcast. And so, it was a really good opportunity to get out there and network. Also fun. It's funny. I've been on it a couple times, and you've been on it more. I think you've been on a handful of times, and it's just a really good time with that. I really like those. I had a lot of fun with 4 Too Many. And by a lot of fun, I mean, I drank a pretty good amount during that episode. So, I was loving life. 4 Too Many got the best of B-word, I think, cause that was fun. But that one was fun. But with you, man, it sounds like a cop out. Being able to see Gunner's face when the Bleach Bros showed up, and being able to joke around with us, like he had a hell of a burn on you. That was the best knock joke I've heard in a while. It was cool to see that, and again, behind the curtain here, we sent some merch and some stickers and stuff to Gunner, and he's our de facto president of the Salty Hippo Nation. He is such a huge fan of our show that it's actually, just fun. It's just a good time. But I think the other one that I have to shout out to is Bottom of the Lineup, just because we did a collab, and we both released the same show, and it's called Bottle of Bleach. It was I think it was actually maybe our first guest experience in the whole podcasting thing. It was a technological shit show.
It was a fucking nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare.
But it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed Will and Tomas. We had a lot of good conversation. The lead up to it was pretty funny, because we could not pin Will down on anything, because Will was all in sports mode, gambling and drinking, and there was like no way to try to pin him down on anything. But that one's memorable too. I'm kind of sad to see that they're deciding to do something different, but that's a good one, man. Again, thank you to all the podcasts that we've had a chance to be on in the last year. And I just want to reiterate, we would love to be on other people's podcasts. Just hit us up. We'll try to schedule it. Jake and I are in 2 different states, and we're on the West Coast, and we find a lot of podcasters are on the East Coast. And if you're recording during the week, we might not always meet your timeline, but just let us know. We'll try to be accommodating. So Jake,
on that, though, we do have some other shows that we will be coming up on. And so, in that light, where do you think we're going with this show over the next year, B-Word?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think we're just going to fold up, pack up shop. I think
No,
we
we're
might
not.
end
Get
at
the fuck
episode
outta here.
60.
Stop.
No, I think that I think it's a fun time. I think in the next year we're going to be on a couple other podcasts. We're gonna network with some new ones. We've already got some slated that we're networking with right now. We're probably going to venture back into sports once or twice because we love it. It's a passion of ours. We're gonna keep it nerdy and we're gonna keep it dirty. We love being able to do the Marvel and the DC and that sort of shit. And of course, we love being able to have crude humor and crude guests. And I over this next year, man, I really think that we're going to have a good time. I think that we're doing a bunch of stuff. I want to get your brother on. Candidly,
Oh, God.
I'd love to
That's
have
going to
your
be a technological nightmare.
yeah.
For you.
Oh, well, it's okay. But I would like to see that we do utilize more of our network with family and friends and get them involved too at times. What's your opinion on where we're going in the next year?
I can sum it up with 5 things. More FTGK all day, every day. Fuck that team. Somebody actually gave me shit the other day. I'm going to call him out, Tyler Jolly, where he said, "Hey, Jake, does it ever stop? I know your asshole hurts." Yes, yes, and yes. Or wait, yes, no, and yes to that. 2, more nerd stuff, nerdy and dirty. 3, more guests and a variety. I mean, one thing I think that, and we've talked about this, and I'm not trying to be a bore with it, but when we first came out and you said, we were probably going to do two different types of shows and stuff, we were afraid because, everybody's going to come out of the woodwork and give you their opinion.
Yep.
Oh, you guys should do this. Oh, I wish you talked about that. And, not that we faltered, and I do appreciate those opinions and always give us those opinions. Constructive criticism is great. However, we were afraid that we didn't have a niche.
Yep.
Like it was just us. Like, okay, today we're going to talk Marvel, and then we'd have friends. Oh, I'm not into Marvel. I won't listen to that. But the one thing I've noticed is we have a core audience, but also like we'll see ebbs and flows and ups and downs. But the big thing now, I'm starting to see it as a strength where people are saying, "Oh, I love the variety. I love that you guys can talk sports and then food and then this and that." That's the third point. More food. I do start. I'm going on vacation next week to Vegas, and then when I get back, I am starting TV again. So we'll be seeing a lot more of the Tailgaters recipes. 4, more of the everlasting segments.
Yes.
I think one of the coolest things we did is when I came to you at first and said, "Hey, I want to do a segment called the Everlasting Jukebox," and it turned out to be a huge hit.
Oh, super popular.
Guests love it. We love it. There's a lot around it. And then it spawned to the Everlasting Bookshelf. Shout out to Foxhound when they gave us the first sponsor that we ever got, which was awesome.
Yep.
And we did that, which will be coming. And then the Everlasting Movie Reel. And I will announce we are going to be doing another one in the future called the Everlasting Console, which will be about video games. Yep.
We're gonna, and not to interrupt you here, but the everlasting segments are really going to be something that we get guests involved with. We try to get our followers involved with, and we just try to make sure that we're having a good time with it, and we're also ranking things that we're passionate about.
Yeah, I think that's the fifth point is going to be back to the whole reason this show started, B-Word, and not just because we're friends, but I think the nights we realized, I think we were on like a 3-month stint of talking for like 4 hours a night.
Yeah,
because I'd be pacing in my kitchen and stuff, and the arguments we were having of like, what's the best Denzel Washington movie? Why? Who would you cast as Wolverine and why?
Yeah.
And so a lot of those where we really get into our old rabbit hole ways and make it entertaining, and the whole point that we started the show. Yeah. And I think that's what I'm very excited for.
I agree with you, man. I think that with you and I had an entertaining idea for the both of us, and we wanted to showcase us. And to a certain extent, we did that, and then we kind of got sidetracked. And I'm just going to be flat honest: we got sidetracked with, oh well, let's get this guest and this guest and this guest, and let's go on here and go on there, and you know, I think every podcaster kind of gets into that thing, but we've decidedly said we want to get more of just B Word and Jake. We, you know, this is our product. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to do it. This is the topics that we want to discuss. If we have guests on, that's absolutely great. But they you know, the guests are going to play a role in the episode. It's going to be for a purpose, or they're going to plug something, or, you know, whatever, kind of like Max when he was going on tour, or you know, things like that. I think that we're going to have a great chance to really kind of prove our dynamics over the next year. And I really hope that we grow in our listenership and our social media presence, just because candidly, I want to grow.
I agree with that. And so I guess I'll point this. I'm going to ask this one question, and you can answer it however you want. And no holds barred. You know, that's my rule. What would you do differently? And what have you hated the most about the last year?
You know, I think differently, I probably wouldn't put a whole lot of emphasis on downloads and plays. I think we found, and again, a roll back the curtain thing. You recorded the second episode of the Hateful Gnomes Music Hut tonight. And we were talking to dads, to Gnome at Dads, about some of their downloads and where they're at, and what we're seeing on the joint episodes and different things like that. Like, that's a good thing for us to talk about. But I think there were times that we were stressed that it's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like almost overnight, those things started to happen for us. You know, we're reflecting back to November of 2021. That was our best month at the time. October of 2021 was our best month at the time. September of 2021 was our best month at the time. And now we've felt the ebbs and the flows on that. And we're actually just coming off our best month ever in April. And so I probably wouldn't put as much focus on that, just because I felt like the stress of that might detract from something that we can focus on something else. Does that make sense?
That is, that totally does. Because I think, and I've said this multiple times on the show, is nobody really knows the answer if it's plays or downloads, or where we're at, or where's this, or what's real, or you know, what's the best ranking system, and how many do you have, and this and that. I mean, it's very few times that I get, if somebody asks me, oh, you have a podcast? Yeah. How many downloads you get? It's usually, what is your show about? Who's on it? Where can I find it? You do get those people like, oh, you know, and you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I started evaluating like the conversations I'm having, and there's a lot of inward thinking, right?
Right.
That you should do in all walks of life, in the sense of nobody else is really giving a shit about our plays. I mean, yeah, it comes down to sponsorships and that type of stuff, and those things are great. But the funny thing was, and this is why it's important, if you are starting a podcast too, to do, you know, go through the growths and stuff. And it doesn't mean everybody has to go through the same line, but in the sense, like, everybody that we were guesting on, because when we first started, we were really getting into that stressful numbers game and everything. And we were like, hey man, what are you guys doing? How did you get a sponsor? And then what is this? And what is that? And everybody just like, who cares? Just be consistent. Just be consistent. Show up every week, put out a product. Your fans will know you're there.
Yeah.
And I will say, I am proud to this day to say, B Word, we record every week. We release every week on time, even though December was a little bit of a nightmare due to the holidays, because you traveled and we did a lot of back-to-backs, but we knocked it out. Yep. We try to be consistent. We try to be relevant. We try to make sure that our we don't miss a beat. And it's not a total bragging point. It's just the fact that also shows that we enjoy this.
Yeah.
We've had nights where you've jumped on here and you're like, I'm not in the fucking mood. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, this is where we're yin and yang. It's my job to get you out of it. And vice versa, where I'm like, you could tell I'm not in the mood.
Yeah.
And you get me out of it.
Well, it was the episode with J-Rob, Jordan Robinson, where we did the I think it was Spider 2-Eye Bleach.
Yep.
You had COVID.
Yeah.
And you weren't feeling well at all.
No.
And I want to say Jordan actually had COVID at the time, or was just getting over COVID, something like that. And so, there are times that real life takes over, and we have to try to offset each other. I know we had Demers on. I think it was Demers. It was either Demers or Sprague, and he was in quarantine because COVID and the whole works. And while we're recording in two separate rooms in two separate states, and we're not near each other, in the height of COVID, this was a thing that still affected us.
I will say I miss when we recorded in person, because that first episode, it was so easy. It was awesome.
Oh,
however, I do enjoy technology, and that we have this, that we're able to connect wherever. Because like I just said, I'm going to Vegas next week. I'm bringing my equipment with me, and I'm going to record down there. And it's the joys of that. And that's I think what I enjoy about this hobby as well, is that it's mobile. I can make it work when I want it to work. I mean, we're the type of people that I will admit we're probably a little bit of workaholics. It might not show in chat groups with people that are with me how I go ham, but I have a job, and it's the fact though that we do put the time and quality effort into this. So I don't know. There's not a lot else I would change. I guess the biggest thing I hated is in agreement with you of how much emphasis I was putting on things that didn't really fucking matter.
And I think the other thing that's probably a simple fix is we would have probably done the mics the way that we have them now.
Oh, right.
as opposed to how we recorded. And if you haven't listened to how we recorded in the past, it was this janky, weird way. Like, we had good mics, don't get me wrong. But Jake would have to record into his personal phone while being on a telephone call on his work phone. And I've got an earbud in my ear to listen to Jake's conversation through his work phone into my phone. And then I'm recording into my computer, and then I'd have to chop and, match up. And so it was janky. Now we just use Zencaster, and we just move forward. It's a pretty simple process. So
I guess that's a point. That's a point, though, not to interrupt you, but that people need to know, like people that are starting this, like, find a platform that you work well with. There's not one perfect one out there. Yeah. We've worked with multiple different shows on multiple different things. Find something that you're loving to use to put out your product, do it well. And that'd be, I guess, the only point I'd make to people.
I agree with that. So to finish this up, we've got 52 episodes, including this one, to kind of go through and reminisce on. Is there one or maybe two or three that kind of stick out to you that, like, it's either your favorite episode, your top 3 episode, a great segment, great laugh? Was there a memory recording in one of those that you just really enjoyed? What would you say there?
I'm gonna do top 5 for me of our show.
Okay.
Number 1 is going to be the Everlasting Jukebox.
Okay.
I think it was because it was something new. It was just a good time because I'm a big music head. And it was fun to get your opinions too. And I like to rank things. I think order is an awesome thing. The second one was how I actually got to finally tell the story of me in vet school. Loki masturbates ducks at night, and for the simple fact of everybody that heard it has the most genuine fucked up laugh, but it was also the most genuine, not that you don't laugh genuine here, but holy shit, B-word, when you're laughing, I forgot that I've never told you that story.
No.
And just seeing your first reaction of, you've known me forever, and as you said, our personalities are different, and seeing you be like, I still have no idea who this guy is.
Audience, my reaction to that was completely pure because I literally didn't know that Jake beat off a duck. And it was the most amazing story at the time. I loved it.
Number 3 is the hater in a barrel walking to a gay bar. And that is the next episode right after that week where you and I tell gay bar stories and what you found out what a bear was. I think that was just the epitome of when you go out with your friends at a campfire or a bar or whatever and just swap stories back and forth like a shit show.
Yeah.
And just laugh. And that's, I think, why that episode's number 3. Number 4 is the I doubted the fire and he morked my genie, the Robin Williams episode. And I think that for me, B-word, that was the most calm, collected, and impactful I've been on this show.
I would say the word vulnerable.
Okay, that's a better word.
You opened up pretty well in that show, in that episode.
I enjoy Robin Williams. I enjoyed talking about that, but it was just a good moment to reflect and just get things out.
Yeah.
And it's a highly rated episode. It's done very well for us. I will say
It's our top episode.
Love that. And then number 5 is going to actually be the Cartoon Madness. And the reason is, B-word, is because it was our first bracket challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But it had the most fan interaction we've ever had, and seeing the debates on that and just us going through, because to be honest, show-wise, it's not like the most, I'm not trying to say we're a bore, but it's not the most entertaining of us telling stories and stuff. It's just us reading numbers and talking about why we think this. But it was just letting the fans have a fucking moment.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of interaction. There was a lot of interaction on that one. So I guess I got to do top 5 with you. I think I'm going to say my number 1 episode is, and this is, I'm going to go 1 down. My number 1 episode is going to be I Doubted the Fire and He Morked My Genie. Specifically because while we were talking about Robin Williams and his creativity, and it was Robin Williams centric, we got into a lot of different topics that we hadn't explored, including mental health. And I thought that that was a really good area where we could be sympathetic to people who struggle with mental health, but we can also, like I said about Jake, be vulnerable and share our own insecurities or share things that we've struggled in and really just kind of make it relatable to people. So that one's definitely going to be my number 1. My number 2 is going to be the Super Bowl preview show. And that one's really important to me for everything that I said before. I just really thought for a 2.5 hour episode that it was done very well. And I'm going to brag on that one. It was, I edited it, I put it together. We recorded all the segments separately. And the way that it came together was fucking tits. And I'm so proud of that episode for both the work that we've done, as well as just having our guests on there. And trying to coordinate guests was also rough too. I mean, I had to take off work early one day. We had to schedule it all different times. So I'm just really proud of that episode. So that would be number 2. Number 3, I thought was the recasting the Batman. I thought we had a lot of fun with that because this was in our wheelhouse, where we were actually going through and saying this actor, this actor, this actor, and having a debate and really recognizing the other person's stuff on there. I really have. This one's one of the funnest episodes, and it's really for the segment of the illiterate versus the imbecile. But I thought that there was a lot of good conversation in A Fistful of Dome. I laughed not only when it happened, when we're recording everything, but I also laughed as I was editing it. I laughed as I listened to it. I've listened to that episode probably 10 times. I just think it's hilarious. And so that one would be my number 4. And my number 5 would be the Everlasting Jukebox. I think that was one area where we brought to the table our albums that we wanted to recognize that were influential on us. And the great part about the Everlasting segment is there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer either. Like, it's completely us. We own it. And it was a great conversation all the way around. So that would definitely be in my top 5.
Good list. I like everything you said. I don't know, B-word. It's just been a fun year. I'm sort of just, as you were talking about it, I was just reminiscing back like on everything we've done, and I think it's just been a good time.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. I'm happy with the direction we're going. We're so thankful for our fans. Thank you to Salty Hippo Nation. As we've said before, if you want to be part of the Salty Hippo Nation street team, reach out to us in a DM. We'll send you some stickers, help with the overt advertising, the adhesive graffiti, if it were. And I mean, other than that, B-word, what do you got for me?
With that, Jake, thanks for all the dirty talk. Come back and get sanitized.